morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this press conference this morning. I want to take just a few minutes to update you so that we are all on the same page with regards to our class size amendment issue. I'd like to give you a short synopsis of what has led the school district to the point where we are today. In October, the school board received a complaint from the State Inspector General's office, which was then forwarded to the school board attorney to investigate. The complaint alleged that class size requirements were not correctly followed in one teacher's classroom at Lake Minneola High School. When the school board attorney finished his investigation in December, he concluded with respect to the specific complaint, appropriate procedures had been followed and compliance was kept with regards to class size amendment. However, during that investigation, he discovered other scheduling irregularities that had possible impact on class size compliance. He then forwarded those to my attention. The next morning, I immediately contacted the Department of Education to self-report on behalf of the school district that there was a potential possibility that some of our classes at this high school may indeed be out of class size compliance, and inquired as to the process we needed to follow at the district to submit data corrections. At that point, the district staff immediately began their review of these scheduling irregularities to validate whether the core classes exceeded the required class size cap. As a proactive measure, the district identified any other schools that had changes to student schedules for the window of time used in reviewing the schedules for Lake Minneola High School. That consisted of 1 week prior to the week when students were counted for class size reporting and immediately following the class reporting count. Using this information as a starting point, the district began interviewing school personnel to understand the reasons in which changes were made to student schedules at that time period. This review yielded 6 schools where scheduling errors were confirmed and that occurred and resulted in class enrollments that exceeded the class size cap. Data corrections were then completed and submitted to DOE within their timeline. According to the class size statute, school districts must submit a compliance plan to the Department of Education for any school with classrooms exceeding the class size cap. That had to be done and completed by February the 1st. Last month, the school board approved the compliance plans to remedy each of the schools that were out of compliance. It is important to note that all students were reported correctly for being in attendance at school during FTE week, which is connected to our FTE funding. The concern here is whether the classrooms where the students were physically present and in attendance were within class size caps as required by the class size amendment, and did the data recorded for that student, was it coded accurately? For reporting purposes and for funding purposes, it's important to note that the Florida Department of Education categorizes the full-time equivalent, or FTE, generated by one student is 1.0 FTE during a 180-day school year. Students in different grades and programs are weighted differently to assure that each program receives an equitable share of funds in relation to its relative cost per students. In October, Lake County Schools reported 40,863 total FTE for the district. The data edits that we submitted to the Department of Education totaled 48.3 FTE at this point, which represents a 0.12% of the total district's FTE. The application of the statute is extremely complex and complicated, with many different components based upon the educational requirements of the students served in any particular classroom. During the course of the district's review of student schedules and classroom assignments, during that time period and since, it has become apparent that systemically there are major concerns regarding how schools are interpreting class size rules and data reporting. Interpretation of these rules appears to be inconsistent across the district. When errors are made in our organization, we own them, and we take corrective action to remedy the situation and to put procedures and policies in place to prevent the errors from occurring in the future. For this reason, I have begun to address this problem by conducting training with principals and staff for the immediate scheduling and FTE reporting. Nonetheless, we need to fully understand how these mistakes were made, what intent was behind these errors, and what corrective action needs to occur beyond training. To help remedy these problems and eventually bring closure to this issue and move our district forward in a correct manner, I have made the decision this week to call for an independent review of class size compliance, any class size compliance violations, and our practices throughout the district in determining how these errors occurred, and to have recommendations on how we proceed forward. I am in the process of currently identifying an independent reviewer and will begin working on a contract for his or her temporary service to the district in this capacity. The completed report of the findings of this independent review, along with recommendations and any corrective action, will be presented to the school board with transparency to the community. I am confident that the independent review will provide impartial findings that will benefit our district in determining corrective actions that are necessary to bring this issue to close and to move our district forward. Thank you very much. We will now entertain any questions that you have.
Maybe I don't understand. Can you? You said that application of the statute is extremely complicated, but it just seems like it's teachers counting students in desks and reporting back how many students are in the class. So what's confusing about reporting those numbers back?
When you look at the statute, it is a very comprehensive statute, and it talks about implementation, it talks about accountability, it talks about all those types of parameters of which a school must work in to be compliant with class size. So there's a lot of factors that go into just, in addition to just counting 1 to 18 or 1 to 20 or 1 to 22, 1 to 25. A student's educational needs, IEP, time for support facilitation. If you are using a co-teaching implementation strategy, there are requirements on what qualifies for co-teaching, the number of minutes that qualifies for co-teaching in meetings. So there's student schedules, there's students' goals, there are IEPs. If it's a co-teaching model, if it's a support facilitation, if you do a combination class and you have multi-grades in a class, it determines what is the cap for that. So those are all, that's just a sampling of the variety of the complexity of it.
Dr. Moxley, you have some school board members bluntly saying that some of your principals lied about this.
And what we are doing, and that is one of the reasons for the independent review, because we need to get to the bottom of it. We need to find out, is it a misinterpretation? Is it a misunderstanding? Is it an error of omission? Is it an error, just like you stated, where someone knowingly knew that this was inappropriate and did it anyways? I mean, that's important for us moving forward with that independent review, and I want the impartiality with that, and so we will have that determined as part of that review.
Can you tell everyone now that instructions never came from your office or any administrator in this building to those principals to make sure that they hid this classroom stuff?
I can stand here today and tell each and every one of you that no directive came from my office or with my knowledge of anyone in this district office to hide students or to lie about schedules for class size reporting. I can tell you that.
Dr. Moxley, has anyone been suspended in this case?
No discipline has been administered at this point, because once I made the decision that I needed an independent review that was someone that was impartial and can give that objectivity, I wanted to make sure that we gave them that opportunity to have the investigation and to bring forth, and whatever those recommendations and the outcome of that independent review, then I will make those decisions.
this started with a teacher complaining. Did you also have parents calling the district saying, my kids are in classes that are too big, and was this ever a concern before this teacher came forward?
I have not had any concern or issue that has come to my office about class size being implemented incorrectly prior to this complaint.
Did the decision for an independent review have anything to do with the close family relations of some of the folks that could be at fault here to your office and your chief administration?
The reason I made the independent review is because as we were working through it, and it became very apparent that there were different interpretations of what this rule meant, how it was applied, how many minutes, did certain components. I felt that it was beyond the capacity that I have within the district with our current staff, just with time element, that I wanted someone to come in and review it. I also believe that if there is anything that is a practice or a procedure in our district, I wanted the impartiality, and that's what drove my decision.
What do you say to the parents at the 6 schools where kids might have been in classes that were too big? Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but what do you want to say to those parents that are now possibly concerned?
A lot of the parents that have had a conversation, they want to make sure that their child is getting a great education, and we support that their child is getting a great education in these schools. And so we will continue to have any dialogue. I have not had any dialogue with specific parents at any of those 6 schools at this point.
Do you have an idea how much the independent review will cost, and as well how much you might end up paying in penalties as a result of the?
Well, there's 2 questions there. First of all, how much will the independent reviewer cost? At this point in time, I am in consultation with identifying who has the skill set to come in and do that. Because of the content of it, I want to make sure that there's an expertise there, obviously. So I do not have the amount of money that it might cost at this point in time, or the estimate of the time that it might take to do a complete independent review. For the second question, as far as the penalties are concerned, I do not have a breakdown of what the penalties may be. The Department of Education does communicate any penalties to school districts that are out of compliance. I assume that they will be doing that sometime in the next 3 to 4 weeks, since that February 1st deadline has passed. In the past years, if you go back and look on the DOE, what they've done in the past, sometimes they have not done any penalties. In other years, there is a formula outlined in the statute, and sometimes they will do a 50% penalty or a 25% penalty. So I do not have an estimate of what the DOE will do with their penalties at this point in time.
Financially, is it sometimes better to just pay the penalties rather than having to hire teachers?
That is a good question, and I think if you look across the state, you will see a lot of districts having that exact dialogue. In some cases, yes, it is more cost efficient to take the penalty than it is to put another teacher in place. And why I say that, and we do look at that, is that if you have FTE week when class size counts are taking place, and 1 student enrolls in your class, and now you have 1 class in 1 school that is 1 student over, yes, it's more cost efficient to take the penalty.
As the leader of this district, do you feel like this is a black eye on the school district?
Oh, anytime you have something like that where the integrity of the school or the school district and the people within the school district is come into question, yes, it is something that we take very, very seriously.
Dr. Moxley, I have 2 questions. Okay, first of all, are any of the school board members or all of them going to be involved within the selection process, number 1, okay, and number 2, in setting the standards for this review? And my second question, are you aware of any other reports that may have been erroneously reported?
You have multiple questions there, so let me see if I can start with each one of them. I'll start with the last one first. To my knowledge, at this point, I am not aware of any other reports that have been incorrectly completed by any staff member in the district. I say that is because we have FTE reviews all the time, and I know that you have seen those have come before the board, and we have very good FTE reporting records in that case, and we're routinely audited in that manner. to go to your other question is that I am working with the Superintendent's Association to provide me independent reviewers that do this kind of work so that I can vet them and look at the expertise so that I have someone that comes and is very aware of what the statutes require and familiar with that work. I will be doing this in total transparency with the board. If there is an agreement that is required to have this work commenced, that will go before the board based on board policy.
But they will not be working with you to set the standards of the review?
Once I find out who the individual is, to do that, I will put together the parameters. I will have recommendations that will go to the board, and I will always consider the board's input in that.
So this is not just about numbers, it's about a combination of other things, but it came to a head based on head count in classrooms?
What I am doing in the independent review is, it is more than just about numbers. Obviously, I want any errors to be corrected. But it is about finding out how we got to this point where errors occurred. So I am actually wanting to look at where along the way in doing our work do we have some gaps in that have the potential that created errors such as this. I want to correct the process, I want to correct the practice, I want to correct the understanding on how we apply, and that we have that consistency moving forward, and correct any errors that might be out there.
If any of those board members are right in their, and maybe they've jumped the gun in asserting that they believe some of the principals lied, would it simply be retraining or training as you're talking about, or are heads going to roll?
I take integrity in our system and in our work very, very seriously. When I came on board as a superintendent, I immediately communicated guiding principles to our administrators and how we do our work. And the first one is that we do our work in a very open and honest manner. And integrity is everything, in my opinion. And I will hold people to that same standard of integrity and honesty, because we don't compromise that, because you compromise the trust of the district.
Dr.
Why do you
Moxley,
think-
have you reported any individuals to the Department of Professional Practices Ethics Commission?
The requirements for reporting individuals to the Office of Professional Practices, we must complete our full investigation first, and then we send our packet up to them for their review. So I've been in communication with the Office of Professional Practices. I take that very seriously, and when the review is complete, anyone that has violated the Code of Ethics will be submitted.
Why do you think this teacher didn't just come to the district office and say, hey, there's a problem in class? Why don't you take it one step further and go to the state?
I do not have the information as to why she took the route that she did. I have not had any communication with that. That part of the investigation was not done by the district, it was done by the school board attorney. So I can't answer the question as to why an individual did one thing over another.
But if she's an employee of yours, would that be concerning to you of why she would not have come to you to say, hey, my class is too big, I can't do my job, or the wrong kids are in my class? Wouldn't you be concerned about that?
Obviously, I would like to know when we have concerns by anyone in our district about any practice that we have. So I would always want to know if we have an issue. I do want to recognize that if we have anything that is incorrect, or we're violating any rule, procedure, statute, regulation, I want every individual that has knowledge of that to feel comfortable in getting that to our attention. And so I want to make sure that any employee, this one as well, that they did the right thing. If they saw something that was inappropriate, they need to report it.
Was there any policy in place that if a principal knew, whoops, we're gonna go over the limit here, that they had to call the central office and let you know about?
I think there's some confusion there, to be honest with you. They have always had communication ongoing, because we continue to look at their enrollment. We look at where they are with their numbers. We continue to give out allocations. In fact, some schools received allocations the first part of October, the last of September, to help them meet class size, to address their growth in their schools. So we've had ongoing dialogue. But there is confusion as to whether, at what point do they call and say, hey, I can't meet it any way other than to go over. There is confusion here. There is not confusion anymore as of yesterday, because I clearly communicated to our principals that they need to, when they are balancing their loads and they're balancing their class sizes, that they need to communicate ongoing with the school district, and when they find that they cannot meet class size with any of the appropriate allowable measures, that they need to call the district office and say, at this point in time, I am over here, I'm over here. And that's when we go back to your question to make the decision. Is the one student over, is that another allocation, or is that where we have to say it is more efficient to pay the penalty?
If
Are
any
you
of them
meeting class size now? Are you meeting class size now?
We are in the process of working on it.
So no?
We are in the process of looking at the data to see where we're balanced. So it's not a yes or a no, we're in the process of balancing out those classes because we still have students enrolling every day.
If any of them knew that they weren't gonna make the numbers, and would there have been any possibility that some of them didn't tell you about it because they'd have been afraid you would have gone all Anna Cowan on them and transferred them to a school that they didn't want to be in? Is any atmosphere of that's why they sweep it under the rug?
That's a question only they could answer. I can't speculate what they are feeling or what they're interpreting or how they're saying it. I can only tell you that my leadership style for the past 6 years that I have been here has been one that I believe is an open door concept. And I'm very consistent in my demeanor in working with our administrator and administrative team and our employees. And you know, from my opinion and my perspective, I would have hoped that they could have felt they could have picked up the phone and called.
But to be clear, did you have principals come up to you and say, hey, we're going to violate this for sure because we have way too many students? Teachers, did you have teachers or principals contact you guys?
I personally did not have anyone contact me, but the staff that does work with allocations from the district level, they had schools call and say, I am at this point, I believe I'm still over in this, I have done this strategy, and this strategy, and I know in certain instances additional allocations were given out.
Are these the same schools that are under review now that contacted you, or?
Well, all schools are under review as of now.
Right, the 6
But
schools that
prior to that, no.
These allocations, that's an extra teacher, correct?
That is correct.
And does that teacher stay for the remainder of the year, or is this?
No, they would stay for the remainder of the school year, yes.
In your opinion, is the class size amendment as it's constructed now, is it in the best interest of students and families? I mean, because you're saying maybe 5 months later, we still don't necessarily have the
I
right
think
numbers.
the class size amendment as it is written is extremely complicated to administer in a school with all the scheduling dynamics that have to be put together. I think the intent of it to have small class sizes is admirable. Having a classroom of 20 versus 21, I think educationally is still very sound. But the time and energy that is taken away by looking at how do we balance class sizes, how do we do this, how do we put this big puzzle together for a difference of 1, 2, or 3 students, I think is extremely complicated and I think needs to be looked at.
Do financial limitations play a role in this? Like, do you guys have enough money to hire enough teachers or to make sure that scheduling does go the right way?
Financial budgets definitely is a concern in running a school district because the majority of your budget is in staff. And Lake County, as you know, has faced many financial struggles with our budget. When you look at where the state of Florida is in funding, and you look at where Lake County is out of the 67 districts, we're down, way down at the bottom of it. And so we struggle every year. There is a break even, if you will, with the cost of a staff person, a teacher in this particular case, versus the number of students that are in class, obviously by the revenue from FTE that is generated. So when you look at it, if you have 1 or 2 or 5 students over, and you hire a new teacher for the rest of the year for that, no, you are not cost effective in that, and you do have to weigh that, and that's where many school districts get into the situation where they have to look at, and they just voluntarily take the penalty because it is a less financial burden on their budget.
Are you saying FTE for Department of Education?
FTE is the full-time equivalency. That is a full-time student, and that is where you get your funding. It is our funding model in the state of Florida.
So 25 students, what was the most you think you had in one class?
The classes that we have started to review would only be 1, 2, or 3 over.
No more than 1, 2, or 3. You don't think
Yeah,
that?
I don't believe there was more than 5 over. It was either, you know, one class would have 1 over, another class might have 2 over. There might have been one with 4 over, but usually it was in the 1, 2, 3, 4 range, and there may have been one that had 5 over too.
High schools, elementary schools, which level would that have been for?
The schools that we reported data edits were high schools and elementary schools.
Susan, you
Yeah.
said the staffers who work with class size amendments got calls from schools and said, we tried this strategy and this one and we're still over. I understand that some of those schools were told to make it work anyway.
I have not
Is
been
that
told,
accurate?
I have not been told that schools were told to make it work anymore.
Yes.
I have not been told that.
Your personnel director didn't tell you that.
I have not been told by
Did your
anyone.
personnel director offer to take a suspension for her role in this?
We have not completed, we're doing this whole review, and anyone that is involved in it, the review will give me that information, and we'll take whatever corrective action at that point.
Have you found the source of this idea that it's okay to create classes that exist for a week on paper? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, you know, these schools are a long way apart. And it just seems a little far-fetched, it stretches the imagination to believe that these principals came up with the exact same idea at the exact same time and implemented it in much the same way, which kind of leads you to believe there's a source of this.
Sure,
Have you found it?
sure. I have not found an exact source. I mean, people have said and speculated this or that, or, you know, we've been told to be innovative. Absolutely. You even look at the statute, there's flexibility within the statute of deploying the resources and using non-load-bearing teachers to help meet class size. Where I believe is the bottom line here is that you can use resource teachers to help meet class size and keep the class caps. There are strategies to do that, very appropriate strategies. In how you do that. You can combine classes, you can differentiate instruction within a class and have different courses, all of those things.
Absolutely, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about creating a class on paper for a week and then getting rid of it.
No one has told or supported anyone in doing that.
You know,
I have no evidence that anyone has been directed to do that or even suggested that they do that.
Well, but there's a written complaint by one of your teachers that says that she was directed to do that by her assistant principal.
And that's the whole reason for the investigation. But your question asked me is, did
Above
the
that,
district staff direct anybody to do that? And I have not found that to be the case.
One of the things I'm wondering is, if you want to find out how far, how deep this goes, why haven't you just asked? Why haven't you called for the teachers to come forward and say, this happened to me? I haven't seen that publicly happen.
You have not seen that publicly happen. I have over 2,500 teachers. I have over 5,000 employees in this district,
Right.
and I have, 4 people in HR, that are administrators. And so when you look at the capacity to do that, that's why I'm here with this independent review, to be honest with you.
So you don't want them to come forward?
I do want anyone that has anything that is saying that something inappropriate in our district is going on. I believe every employee should come forth and tell us that. In fact, we have a board policy called a code of ethics that says just that. If any employee in this district has knowledge that any wrongdoing is occurring, they have the obligation to come forward. It even goes on to say that if you are directed to do something that you feel is in violation, that you do not have to follow that directive. So it has that protection in it.
So could we say that you are asking for teachers that have had this happen to come forward?
I am happy to hear from any employee that has any concern about any wrongdoing in our district.
What is the purpose of this press conference? Is it to clear the air with whom?
I want to be very transparent about what I'm doing.
This is said in the most respectful way. It seems like your answers to a lot of the questions that have happened today are, no one's come to you directly, you're unaware of it. In any of this, do you find fault in yourself in not being as communicative with your staff as maybe you could have been in knowing these things were happening? Because you're saying things may have been reported to staff in the office, but you were unaware. How is it that you're unaware of things that are happening on this large of a scale, maybe is my question.
No, you're not correct in what you just stated to me. We have staff that handle allocations and the distribution of those allocations and work with the schools. And that is their job, and they do that. And so to say that they did something wrong and I don't know about it, we're looking at everything right now. I believe that at this point in time, we want to look at every factor of it. But I know what class size is. I know how we allocate resources. We have an allocation formula. We have a statute. We have talked about co-teaching models. We've talked about all those different strategies. So to say I'm totally unaware of it is not correct. Have employees come directly to me and said we have a class size amendment problem here in this district? No, I have not had anyone come to me and say that.
Are there still students right now who are sitting in overcrowded classrooms?
At this point in time, we are doing the February FTE count, and that is exactly what we're looking at with each one of our school principals right now. So I can't tell you today the number of students that's in every one of our classrooms. Our principals are working with the district because we're going through and identifying all of that.
And are there any that you know of that are overcrowded today?
No, Lauren, I honestly can tell you right now, I have not pulled an enrollment sheet as of yesterday to go down through the thousands of classes we have in this district that I could say here, yes, I know that at this school, in this classroom, it's over. Usually, historically, FTE for February, that's when we have the lower enrollment. I can't say that that is true this year because we haven't taken the count yet. We still continue to have some growth this year that we didn't expect. So, but I will be looking at that.
So how many classes did you miss the cap by?
I know it in FTEs, I'm sorry. I know it in FTEs. So it was the 48.3 FTEs.
But 48.3 FTE is not necessarily 48 students.
No,
physical students.
no, it isn't, because when you look at high schools, it's by period, so it's 1 period a day. And so that's prorated, that's a proportion of an FTE. So it could be multiple students, and then they make up, you could have 6 students with 1 FTE because it's 1 period. It's very complicated.
So is there any way to gauge how many students were sitting in those overcrowded classrooms during that October FTE week? I mean, you keep saying 48 FTE, but that doesn't represent the number.
I'd have to go back and pull the schedules to look at the head count.
But you do know from when Shelley asked you that it was 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 or 5 in some classes.
The one thing you have to look at there and remember is that at a high school schedule, that when you say 1, 2, or 3, that's 1 period, so it's 1/6 of the day.
Who's leading this training that you're going to be doing?
What we did yesterday is we started with the principals,
Who's leading the training?
the chief financial officer came in along with the staff member from IT that works with FTE reporting, data reporting, and class size compliance, and both of them, I was also present, and we went through the statute completely, and we walked through what were the permissible, allowable ways to meet class size, and the time components that were required in each one of those strategies. All right, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Was it, do you have a ballpark range on the information ballpark?
I don't, I really don't, because I've not done one of these before.
Okay.
so.